Good evening. I'm Bob Cecilio, founder of the Queen Psychic Club and your host on Psychic Awakening. Tonight, we have the second in a three-part series on psychic development, and it will be on psychometry with our special guest, Diane, psychic consultant. Good evening, Diane.
Hi, Bob. Nice to be back again.
Yes, it's always great to have you here. Just refresh our viewers about who you are and what you're all about.
I'm a psychic consultant. I've been doing this work for approximately 18 years. I do channeling, which means I communicate with the dead. I do diagnostic work, of course, use tarot cards, and basically read a person's past, present, and future, and try to use the work as a healing agent.
Now, how does psychometry fit into all this?
Psychometry is basically when a person uses a piece of jewelry to conduct, which metal is a good conduit of energy, which is basically why I believe jewelry is used a lot. What you do is you hold the jewelry, so I'll take off my watch here, in the palm of your hand, and you would use a piece of jewelry of the person that you want to work with. It's very important the jewelry be owned by that person and not from their aunt or uncle, because that would be the information you would receive. So you would place the jewelry in the palm of your hand, you would hold that piece of jewelry, and then begin to receive information that hopefully will be needed by the client. Basically, jewelry is a tool, as is tarot cards, automatic writing, even astrology and numerology, are all things that are used to access information.
Mm-hmm. Does a person have to be present? Like if I was to bring you a piece of jewelry, say that was my brother's, and I gave it to you, he's not in your presence, can you still read the jewelry, you get the vibration?
Okay. Well, actually, I do most of my work by phone so that I can work with people all over the country. Primarily, I use pictures. The person doesn't have to be present in front of you in the same space, but I like to have contact with the person so they can confirm the information that I'm receiving.
And how does the psychometry work? What is the... How does it work?
Well, for our viewers tonight, basically, before you can do psychometry or any type of psychic work, you have to be open. And what we're going to talk about tonight is the 4 psychic senses, which we've all have. We were born with them. Nobody taught us how to use them, so tonight I'm going to show you a way to open them up and how to exercise them. 4 psychic senses that we have are intuitive knowing, clairvoyant, which is through the third eye, a very familiar term. There are psychic feelers, which get feelings and sensations right in the solar plex area, and clairaudience, which hear very specific phrases and sentences right above the ear in the temporal lobe area. What I'm going to do is work with each one of those specifically so that hopefully our viewers will be able to tune in to which one of those senses they think is strongest in them, and then begin to exercise that ability so it becomes very natural to them. What I'd like to say is that we all have intuition. It's a word we're all familiar with, and it's been stated that intuition is just basically a sleeping giant. It's just waiting to be awoken. And what we're going to do tonight is find the ways to open up those senses, to work with our intuition, to help us in our life. You may find that once you're open, you can begin to read people, but it's not necessarily what we're trying to accomplish. We're familiar with our physical senses, which are eyes and hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So now what I'm going to do is just talk about each sense individually. Psychic intuition or intuitive knowing. A person who's strongest in this, and I like to equate this also to when you're listening to a radio, you want to tune into the station that's clearest. So that's what we're going to try to find, which one is clear for you, which one you should work with. If you're an intuitive knowing person, basically you're very quick-witted, quick-minded. The thoughts come in very fleeting, so they're very hard to catch. So once you work with this ability, you want to definitely take a journal so that you start to catch the thoughts and become more aware of them. An example of intuitive knowing would be somebody driving on a highway and all of a sudden they feel the need to just veer over to the right lane, and then they realize that they just missed being in an accident. Person with intuitive knowing ability very often talks with, "I knew that," or "I just knew that," or, you know, that's the way they usually phrase their words. Generally, they finish your sentences a lot, okay, and they adjust to change very quickly. If you feel that you're an intuitive knowing person or that sense is strongest in you, you want to exercise, shift up to the crown chakra area, which is located on the top of your head. So you would just basically imagine the energy flowing through the crown chakra and then let the thoughts flow through. It's very important not to force anything, to just let yourself become a channel and put that ego aside, which is basically why a lot of people cannot work with their intuition, because their ego constantly gets in the way.
Ego always gets in the way.
It just throws you right off, okay? So if you think you're an intuitive knowing person, just shift up and constantly work with the thought that you're receiving right through the crown chakra, okay? And also, don't force anything, let it flow, and keep a journal, which is basically what you want to do with any one of your senses until it becomes very natural. The second sense is psychic feeling.
If I can just back up on keeping the journal, I do that, and it's always nice to know you write it down before it happens.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you know.
Well, that's the purpose, so that as you see things manifest, then you say, hey, you know, I have something here. This really works.
Right.
Psychic
feeling. It's also confirmation.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
A person who has psychic feeling is generally a person that is very sensitive to others. It's the type of person that when you give them a call, hey Bob, something's wrong, they immediately know that something's bothering you. They're very loving, very affectionate. As a matter of fact, they would focus in the solar plex area, and these people can feel anything from butterflies to actual nausea. So they really have to learn to protect themselves, which I'm going to get into at the end. This type of person will talk with, I feel something's wrong. They walk into a home and say, I don't feel comfortable. They may be highly fashion conscious, yet they'll have to buy shoes or clothing that feels comfortable. Okay? Basically, if you feel you're a psychic feeler, you would actually take the jewelry or the picture and place it right here in the solar plex area.
And if the person
and see what you're receiving.
Intuitive through the crown chakra, would you suggest holding the jewelry up?
Well, you don't want to hold it here. That's clairvoyant.
Okay.
I've seen psychics on TV hold like a bag of things right on top of their head. You don't have to, but you know, you might want to. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. The idea is just to know that that's where it's coming from, and have your focus in that area of your body. Okay. So the solar plexus, person who's a feeler would want to focus on this area. The problem is they're so sensitive not only to energy but to everything around them. Sometimes it's hard for them to detach. The next sense, also I'd just like to say, if you notice when you're feeling uncomfortable, you cross your arms. So right away, without knowing it, you're protecting your solar plex area. The third sense is clairaudient. Clairaudient is when you're hearing right above your ears in the temporal lobe area. And I'd like to make a comment about this. There was a write-up that a surgeon took a probe, and he just, you know, played around right above in the temporal lobe. And although the patient was under anesthesia and couldn't obviously know what was going on, they were able to remember conversation.
Okay, you're not saying the ear itself, you're saying
above in the temporal lobe.
Here?
Yeah, about an inch or two.
Okay, but not in the ear itself.
No, that's where you hear from the outside.
Okay, so that's interesting. You hear from the outside with the ear.
That's the point, right.
And you hear from the inside at the temporal lobe.
Right.
Very good.
When you're exercising clairaudient ability, you're not looking to hear from the outside in, you're looking to hear from the inside out, because your messages are received in, and you as the channel will flow them forward. Okay? Clairaudient ability, you're hearing again like with intuitive knowing, but there's a difference. Usually it's phrases, sentences, it can be words, but it's very, very strong. Did you ever hear your name being called and all of a sudden turn and no one's there?
Right.
But it's very forceful. So it's a little different than intuitive knowing, because it startles you, you know, it awakens you. Intuitive, clairaudient people are very good organizers, okay, and they usually ask you a question and then they answer it, because they're hearing very quickly. The only problem with clairaudient ability is that sometimes it's received at a very low volume. So it gets mixed up with your own thoughts. So again, as you write your journal and you start to exercise the ability, you'll become aware of what's your own thought as opposed to what's a message from the universe.